Welcome to our 99th podcast. Today we're talking about communication channels, tools, and techniques within organizations. What's one thing you can do to make the way you communicate to others more effective on the job, to turn knowledge into capability? Keep listening to find out. Welcome to Harmonious Workplaces, a podcast about corporate culture, organizational change management, and workplace behavior. Harmonious Workplaces was started by independent consultants to explore and challenge workplace issues and to build better ways of working. It's a blend of theory and practice, grounded in real-world experience, working with organizations of all sizes across a wide range of industries. If you own a business, lead a team, want fresh ideas about the workplace, or just enjoy listening to consultants talk candidly about how to make work more effective and more enjoyable, we invite you to sit back, relax, and dive in with us to Harmonious Workplaces. Hello, Harmonious Workplaces listeners. Welcome back to our 99th podcast. Can you believe it, Ben?
No, that's crazy. How
We're
cool
almost
is that?
there. So cool. And in case you don't know, I'm Rich Cruz, an organizational development consultant. And this is Ben Kleinman, a certified change management professional.
Hey, everyone.
And Ben, we have been talking largely about, we're kind of excited about our article in TD Magazine, right? The December 2025 edition, where we introduced our knowledge to performance model, right? And so we've talked about some of the different aspects of that, from the foundational inputs being the roots, the developmental drivers being the trunk, the behavior enablers. I cannot talk today, but behavior enablers being the branches, right? And there's
And it's a really cool model, and I'm just showing on the screen for everyone who's listening on the podcast and not visual. It's a tree, and so we have this idea of a tree as an ecosystem for knowledge transfer. So yeah, Rich is cutting Rich off in the middle of his
Oh no, it's just good.
Of that. But there you go. That's communication for you.
Yep, and I appreciate you doing that, because I could not say enablers to save my life, Ben.
Well, you just did, so there you go.
There we go. All right, we got it out. So if anybody's interested, it's and you want to Google this, it's plant the seeds for knowledge transfer. That's the article, right? So,
Right. And so it's great because the model does just a nice job visually, sort of walking people through this idea of roots and a trunk and branches and soil and fruit, all of this tied into knowledge transfer and the aspects of knowledge transfer. And what we were sort of just going to dive into today, I think, is the idea of communication being integral to each part of that.
Sure.
So, for example, roots, you have these foundational inputs. You need communication part and parcel of all of that.
Absolutely.
Trunk being development drivers, communication is critical for that. Branches, behavior enablers.
Right.
That is a tough one, behavior enablers.
Right.
Yeah. So wrote that. Branches as behavioral.
Well, we have all ourselves to blame for that one.
I know, right? Right. Communication, so critical for enabling positive behavior and all of that. And then your feedback loops with the soil and the fertilizer, communication is key. And then your outcomes and performance that result from all of that, result of communication. And then, that's just baked into everything. So fantastic. Whoever thought of that idea was brilliant. And really well done.
They were.
Well done. So where, Rich, given that the topic of communication is vast and broad, and maybe you would like to tee us up for where you thought we might go.
Sure.
Today, you have a beautiful graphic.
Yep. We'll make sure we put that in there.
Well, one of them beautiful in its overwhelmingness, and we'll get to that and all of that. So yeah, let's dive in.
Cool. Well, before we get into, so let's I think maybe we break this down into, why communication is important and all that. Then maybe give some more of the pragmatic channels and why we would use these channels. And then we, in our third segment, we can try to tie it all together. But it's a pretty robust topic, I mean,
Yeah, for
literally.
sure, for
Yeah,
sure. And I think we're just kind of dig into just little bits and pieces of it. This is
right.
not the be all end all discussion of communication.
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But
Yeah,
really, I mean, nothing really happens without us being able as a social ecosystem, right? Oh, look at that, the product placement. Nice, Ben. Ben is communicating our brand for those who are listening by holding up our logo on our patent pending mugs there.
which you too can order.
That's right. You can go to our website. We have a Cafe
Mhm.
Press
Yeah,
a link for you.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, we have to be able to whatever data we bring in and parse out to make sense of it. We have to be able to communicate it. When we teach, we have to be able to effectively train and develop others through effective communication and all that, right? So, um, but I like that you said here in our notes, you said, is it fair to say that listening is more important than speaking? Uh, I would argue, you're right.
you're
What's your opinion, Ben?
I just anytime the idea of communication or the topic of communication comes up, I always just go back to Stephen Covey and his comment or quote about seek first to understand and then be understood.
Mm,
And it's just captures everything that I, feel is so important with communication. And it's not always easy. And yet it can be so rich and rewarding.
sure.
And
I,
I think where you're going with that is that in order to have positive communications where you are trying to get something in a workplace, you're usually trying to get something done or change someone's behavior or give them praise or encouragement or what have you, or just listen and support them and validate them. So much of that is about listening and recognizing where that person is
mhm,
before you try to engage and ask them to do something differently or validate them or whatever.
sure.
People just have this in innate need to be seen, to be heard, to feel understood,
Right, right.
and as
And
a
that's
communication partner, that's just so important that you recognize that that's your job.
yeah, for sure, for sure. And the same, I mean, that goes for both the sender and the receiver, right? I mean,
Mhm, mhm,
on both ends, we want somebody to understand where we're coming from and what our meaning is, right? We've talked a lot about meaning, um,
mhm,
from
mhm.
various different standpoints, but, uh, and of course, there's the old, adage of, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? For a
Right.
reason, right? Listen twice as much as you speak, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So I mean, yes, that does make a lot of sense
right,
to pause. It makes, yeah, look at the pregnant pause there, right? To think about what you're going to say or do or send before you do so, right? And to push that through several different filters
right.
of understanding the other person. We've talked. I think we've talked a little bit about critical thinking and looking through the various lenses of ethics and then persona and the concept itself, the situation analysis before we actually get to something that can actually be or should actually be shared.
Right,
Right.
right. And I think one of the things we were talking about on a recent podcast had to do with feedback and how sometimes there's a need for instant feedback and
Hmm.
instant communication. So the example was if you're seeing someone who's about to put their hand on a hot stove, you would just instantly say, "Stop, hot, don't do that.
Sure.
Careful,
Sure.
watch out." And there's situational needs and situational awareness that you have to have for communication.
Hmm.
Uh, and I think most workplaces realize that if you're um, angry with someone, that you do need to layer in some of those filters before you just explode at someone,
Right.
because that can have lasting consequences in a way that's different from saying, "No, no, no, don't." don't touch that. It's hot. Um,
Sure.
that there's some filtering that has to go on, to your point.
Yep.
And it's just very situationally based.
Right. To that effect, Ben, there's something also to be said about being intentional about, there's a lot of automation that occurs these days with artificial intelligence, but
Yeah.
also, you know, we've had technology that have been sensors for decades, right? And these sensors give us these warnings or shut down a machine or do something to communicate to us that something's wrong. We need to go and take care of this
Right.
situation before we can
Right.
move forward, right?
Right.
And to be intentional about thinking about what the risks are and how those automations get put into play I think it's something to think about because there are ways we can, even when we're dealing with change, even when we're dealing with um, people issues, right? Is that there are some tools that we can discuss in the next segment that do have automations where when something happens, instead of one person having to drop everything, send everything out, and become the town crier or whatever you want to call it, right? That
Ding, ding,
right.
ding, ding, ding.
But you could have a robot do this for you, or essentially some kind of software or mechanism that can be a lot faster and pick up a pattern that could be lost by a group of people. So
Right.
yeah.
Right. I'm I'm gonna jump the shark here. So, you know, fair warning to everyone. Back where I come from in the Northeast, outside of Boston, very, very historical area. The Revolutionary War is a very prominent thing. School kids are taught all about it. They do reenactments every year of the British marching on the colonies, and
Mhm.
you had Paul Revere on his ride and all of that. And
Sure.
I'm picturing Paul Revere riding down, saying, "The British are coming, the British are coming." Classic painting, him on a horse, screaming in the middle of
Yes.
the night, and all that kind of stuff, alerting all the farmers, gathering the militia, all that. And now you're talking about robotics and automation, and I'm picturing one of those little carts that you're starting to see now on the streets delivering packages, and
Right.
this little cart rolling down a little dirt road very slowly, very intentionally, not bumping into any rocks or any other critters walking through the night, just sort of this automated voice going, "The British are coming. The British are coming," or whatever voice it's
Or
in.
what? Right. Yeah.
Just it's not the same. It's
No,
just not the same.
that's true. This is that very true.
All right,
And there are
moving right along.
well,
What year no, what I'm sorry, can I just
you
cut in
please,
something
please.
more, germane to our conversation, though? When you're talking about automation, and you're making me think of quality by design and building in safety. So last,
Right.
episode, we talked a little bit about someone sticking their hand in a machine and it
Right.
automatically stopping before it chops someone's fingers off or whatever.
Sure.
So you're building in safety, and I'm wondering if in our automated communications specific to change and change management and org transformations and psychological safety and change resistance, if we can find now with some of the tools that are getting very attuned and sensitive and can do a lot of automatic thinking in the background, if there's a way that we can sense and build in a little bit of that quality by design for our sensing and our communication
Mhm.
so that we automatically trigger some of those safety features or those resistance or hesitancy engagement features so
Sure.
that it pops up that, Rich is doing fine with this change, but Ben, he was doing great last week, and now this week he's starting to pull away and something's going on. Let's
Mhm.
have someone go talk to Ben, or let's send him a link to remind him to, step away from work for 5 minutes and get a coffee or whatever, and,
Sure.
that kind of thing.
Sure.
I have not seen tools that are able to do that or that are built to do that, but I think that might be a really wonderful evolution for some of the tools in change management.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Well, I have a few ideas about that where I've used probably a very, very, very tiny amount of what
Mhm.
is capable out there.
Yeah, yeah.
But maybe we take a quick break and we come back and we talk about some
Okay.
of the different channels and how we might be able to do that using some of those tools.
Sounds good.
Okay. We'll be right back.
Oh, hi. I'm Hermie, the HR Hermit Crab. So, I have a quick question. Have you ever had that one employee who knows how everything works, but if you ask them to write it down, they say, "Oh, it's easy," and then don't write anything down? Yeah, me too. Try getting Hermione to share how she sets up her spreadsheets. Sheesh. Here's the thing, when knowledge stays in people's heads, performance gets wobbly. Training doesn't stick, new hires struggle, and suddenly everyone's asking, why did this used to work? That's why we talk about the knowledge to performance tree model as featured in TD Magazine from Harmonious Workplaces. Knowledge forms the roots of an organization's value. If you don't capture it before people retire, resign, or burn out, performance doesn't grow. See, you can buy new systems, you can launch new initiatives, but without the roots, you mostly grow frustration. Anyway, I'm Hermie saying that Harmonious Workplaces is here to help you keep the good stuff from walking out the door. Make change your friend. Bye.
And we're back. All right, Ben. So we talked about like just a gloss overview of, why we have to communicate, where it fits in with, knowledge, performance, and turn that to capability. But
Right.
like this one, this segment, we might get a little more granular into some of the available communication channels. This is not a comprehensive list by any stretch, but yeah. So some of those include email, team chats like Microsoft Teams, Slack. There's a whole bunch of other ones, right, that are out
Yeah.
there. Video conferencing, Zoom, Google Meet, again, Teams, phone calls, project management tools such as Asana, Trello, Monday.com, Planner, and Microsoft. Then, of course, we have our in-person meetings and individual one-on-one sessions, and then knowledge platforms such as SharePoint and Confluence and those types of things, right? Different wikis and stuff like that. So I'm sure you've used like every one of these in your work, right?
Yeah, I imagine most people in a given organization are using a handful of different tools at any given time, or communication mechanisms or methods or media to do what they need to do. I mean, you think of the course of your day, you're waking up, you're checking your email, you're logging into some system to see what tasks you have, you're logging into some other system to see who's chattering about what, or what person needs something instantly. They're messaging you in a way that's different from maybe just sending a regular email, or there's a all staff meeting, so everyone's going to a conference room or joining a big session over a virtual meeting, or you have a one-on-one or a small team meeting, and so
Sure.
maybe that's in person, or maybe that's again on a screen. And so you go through your day and you just think these are now nothing special. They're just part of an average person's day in a typical office.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a little bit different on a manufacturing floor where you're maybe a little bit less virtual in that sense, but
Right.
you're still probably using a lot of those same kinds of tools for things. And so it's just kind of part and parcel of the working world nowadays.
Sure. And with the and there are things also that aren't even on here that are like more event based, right? Where you have speakers come in, and
Yeah.
conferences where
Right. More
you know,
special events type
yeah,
stuff.
right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Right.
and then we have, of course, hybrid.
Yep.
A couple of weeks ago, I facilitated a hybrid event where I had a group of manufacturers within the where we were co-located, but then we
Mhm.
also had an audience that was external.
Sure.
As so it just like now we can have breakout sessions in person and at the same time have facilitated breakout sessions in virtual rooms, and then bring everybody together and still allow them to all share, which is,
Yeah.
so it's just, we've been doing this for years. It still blows my mind that we can do that type of thing now.
It's something that's it's really culturally quite amazing how quickly people have gotten used to being in a hybrid or fully remote type of engagement environment.
Right.
And initially, at the beginning of COVID, you'd have these meetings and there might be someone in a room or a couple of people in a room and one person online dialing in or a handful of people online dialing in, but most people in the room, whatever it was. And there would be this real big disconnect that you could feel between the people in the room and the people on some kind of virtual screen. And it would be almost like every now and again, someone on the screen would be saying, hey, wait, don't forget about me. I have
Sure.
a point. I have something important to say. Or someone in the room would remember, oh yeah, there's people on a screen. We should go ask them what they think.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's just gotten so much more natural where there's a flow in the room that incorporates the screen, or there's a flow on a screen that incorporates the room. However that looks, it's amazing how quickly people have adapted to that.
Yeah. Yeah. All things that we thought was science fiction and, in the 1950s and 60s, right, with the sci-fi
yeah.
movies, right? And now it's
Yeah.
all very, very real. Dick
Right.
Tracy's watch, right, is like all
Yeah.
of those things, right?
All that. No, it's crazy. And even the more intentional behavioral aspects of it too. Initially, people, I think, were not as good communicating over something like Zoom or Google Meet or Microsoft Teams or any of those online platforms. And now people have tried to get and have gotten a lot better overall in terms of recognizing that when you're looking at someone, you're not looking at them. You're sort of, there's this discord or dissonance between, if I'm looking at you and you're looking at me, you're seeing me looking at you, but not at your eyes, right? And
Right.
so where I'm focusing matters, and how I use body language matters, how I scan for body language matters, and there's just a little bit more of a third wall, if you will, breaking that sort of more immediate intimacy that you have when you're in person, and it's a little bit harder. But I think people have started to realize that they can't take things quite as much for granted. They have to be more intentional about checking in with their communication partners more intentionally, more thoughtfully, more periodically, or being a little bit more clear at how they communicate, how they use gestures, all that kind of stuff. It's,
Sure.
again, it's amazing to see how people have adapted in relatively quick time.
Sure.
From an evolutionary perspective, it's just almost instant.
Yeah. 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 We were we were, of course, forced to adapt very quickly with
COVID.
COVID.
Well, with COVID, yeah.
Right. But even since then, there's a graphic that we'll share we'll share a link to it anyway, from Chief Martech. So this talks about the marketing communication technologies, right? And we have had
Martech is a mashup of marketing technology.
Marketing technology, yeah. And so there's this map of how many different technologies have emerged since 2011, where there's by the end of 2025, there were 15,384 solutions that have been developed across several different channels, right? I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 different channels here, which is close to our list, right? And yeah, we've had to, not only have we had to adapt, but then the software manufacturers are like, okay, well, how can we compete in this space, and how can we meet the unmet or perceived unmet needs of various audiences, right?
Yeah.
And so then everybody who has, and it's been my experience that nobody likes whatever solution they get, so they end up at some point moving to another one, which is great for change management.
Yeah.
But it's created a lot of a need for people to be able to adapt and, of course, leverage all their communication channels to bring in some of these new communication channels.
Right. Right. I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and the person was being interviewed was talking about technology stacks and how nowadays I think it's sort of assumed that you're going to be changing vendors and changing in and out aspects of your tech stack, or maybe the whole tech stack. Now it's sort of a 5-year cycle, and in the past I think you'd have more like 10 or 15-year cycles, or 20 year. You go back to manufacturing plants, you'd put in a machine, and that machine was expected to last for years and
Years.
decades maybe.
Right.
And now you're talking about changing in and out different types of technologies to make your internal systems go. And you think about the effort that it is to put in, years and years ago when you would put in a ERP system, enterprise resource planning system. I mean, that was a years long effort, and
Mhm.
you would not want to do that more than once ever in your company's history. I mean, it was painful, it was expensive, it was slow, it was a real chore for everybody to convert all this data and processes into the way that the system wanted, not that the system would flex to the way your company was. You had to rejigger your company to meet the needs of this software.
Right.
Now it seems like the idea that you would just do that every 5 years or so, or even less, I would expect. To me, that's bonkers. But it's changing so fast. And to your point, where you have 15,000 different vendors just for marketing and communications,
Mhm.
let alone all of the other corporate functions. I mean, that's just bonkers.
Yep. Yeah.
Bonkers.
But I mean, this is why like master service agreements for a lot of these software solutions, particularly with ERP, CRM, customer relationship management, SCM, supply chain management, and then of course some of the Marcom type of things, from email or from a email marketing or marketing automation standpoint, all those. They are 3-year plus agreements.
Mm.
First of all, because it historically, like you said, the implementation time
Mm-hmm.
was huge, right? Like it's,
Right.
6 months to a year of just implementing and then rolling out and integrate into your culture. But that is that has become, I don't know about your experience, but I've seen that compressed significantly, um, because of partially because of artificial intelligence, partially because there are now, integrations. It was always the dreaded thought of having a an API. When you heard API, forgive me, I cannot remember. It's something plugin. I don't remember the first word for it, but
I think
an
it's
AP
app or programming interface.
application. Oh, is that right?
I
Application
think so.
programming
Yeah. I'll
interface.
double
Okay,
check.
thank you. Um, but
Yeah.
that
Application programming interface.
okay, great, thank you.
It's
So
basically a way to plug two different softwares together that don't talk to each other. So talking
right,
about communication,
right.
it's a translator from system A to system
For
B.
system A to system B, and you have an endpoint here and an endpoint there, and
Mhm.
then you have to map the data points, various different data fields, and then the
Mhm.
automations and whatever happens, link those together. So those things can take $3,000, $5,000, $7,000 a pop. And you could have hundreds of APIs that have to be put into any one of these systems, right? And now there's been a lot of work done to better integrate them. So you look for native integrations and things that were built in, and so the process of vendor selection has improved. It's still not great, but it has improved significantly over the years, right?
Right. And I've seen vendors make it easier to swap in and out for just a subset of, so you don't have to do your whole stack. You could just swap in and out one component, and each vendor wants to make it as easy as possible for them to get swapped in and someone else to get swapped out, even if it's just a little portion. So they integrate
Right.
very easily. And so it's interesting. We're talking about communication, and we started talking about human to human, and
Mhm.
now we're talking about machine to machine
Machine to
or
machine. Yeah.
system to system. And naturally then we're probably going to be talking at some point about human to machine and machine to human and how all that's evolved. People
Sure.
originally didn't have machines they talked to unless you
Right.
were talking to your flint rocks as you were trying to spark a fire and swearing at them because they couldn't spark. But then you would be getting more into recent times. You'd have some sort of interface where you're plugging in your data through keystrokes into punch cards and feeding that into a huge mainframe kind of
Sure.
system that took up an entire room. And now the interface has gotten very intuitive with your mobiles and things
Oh,
like
yeah.
that, and your watches and those types of things. So the human computer interaction, and then with AI, oh my gosh, even just AI has evolved so much where you used to have to be very careful about your prompts and prompt engineering and your search using your favorite search engine. You had to be very explicit, and you had certain search terms and ways to frame a search that would find you what you wanted.
Sure.
And now you just spit out anything, and the search engine or the AI model is so intuitive, it figures it out. And so
Right.
it's like this full circle where we had to adapt to the machine in the same way that originally installing these huge, massive enterprise resource planning systems, the company had to adapt to the software. Now it's come full circle where the software is adapting to us and our
Right.
needs. It's very easy to plug and play a software. It's very easy to just either speak or type anything. You don't even have to worry about proper grammar or punctuation. You just it's in there.
Right.
And the engine behind everything is so sophisticated that it just finds exactly what you're looking for. It spits out the research that you're looking for, and there's back and forth if it has questions, and it,
Sure.
can I frame it differently for you, or would like me to follow up on this or that? And it's just amazing how, in some ways, as a proponent of the human, it's cool how machines are now at a point where they're making it easier for us to be people interacting as opposed to trying to be quasi machine interacting.
Sure. And we need, and so for that to all work, though, we do kind of need to give. There are some constraints already built into some of the AI models, right? Certain
Yeah.
do's and don'ts that are from an ethical standpoint, from a legal standpoint, that are put into some of those. But yeah, there are some other things that we have to put into play, on the human side that add some of those parameters, so we remain on track and accurate and on task to what is relevant to to what we're trying to have communicated, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah. And that it's trustworthy and credible. I mean, all of
Yeah.
that.
Right.
You think when you have go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, when you're having a conversation with someone, you think back 20 odd years before there was, anything remotely related to AI in a typical workplace environment. Um, you would know pretty quickly if you're in a hallway at a water cooler, whether you could trust what someone's telling you.
Right.
And now I think that's starting to become something that we're observing with how people interact with their favorite AI tool.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
You have this sense of having a double check and triple check sometimes what it's telling you, and all
Yep.
being very careful and cautious about that.
For sure. For sure. But it's become part of how we live and what we do. I know we're coming up. We need to take a break in just a second here, but I gave the list of email, team chat, video conferencing, phone calls, project management tools, in-person meetings, knowledge platforms, and there are more, right? Of course. But some of the things to think about are who the intended audience are, and we'll have in the notes. We'll have a list of potential intended audiences. Again, not at all a comprehensive list, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
and then the primary purpose of that, right? So we don't, just for the sake of time, we don't really have time to go through all of that stuff. It may be worth it to bring in another episode later on after our 100th episode.
Woohoo!
That's so crazy.
But it's tracking along with what we've been talking about in terms of, if you were years and years ago, if you were going to give someone some bad news or give them good news about a promotion, you might have a one-on-one conversation in an office.
Right.
And if you were having a big team celebration, you might do that at a restaurant, or you might do that in a big team meeting room or a big conference room or something like that. And it's now just, there are digital tools that enable that in ways that we didn't have years and years ago. And
Sure.
there are different tools for communicating different things. And so it's great that we have all these at our fingertips.
Yep, for sure. Well, Ben, let's take a break. When we come back,
Yeah.
one of the things that I would like to bring up, because you had mentioned this before, is how can we use things like artificial intelligence just to help tailor some of these things. And if we could, I would like to share one way that I use it.
Yeah.
That
Great.
might be helpful. So,
I'm all about the practical. Let's do
right.
it.
Okay, cool. We'll be right back.
In a world where leadership needs clarity and action, and HR gets left out of the loop, one hermit crab steps in to save the day, only to be shut down by management. From the creators of Hermie the HR Hermit Crab and the Harmonious Workplaces podcast comes a new shell-shocking adventure, Out of the Loop Into the Fire, or HR Hung Out to Dry. This book blends workplace satire with evidence-based lessons, reminding leaders that culture, trust, and people strategy don't exist as extras. They form the foundation of lasting success. Whether you work as an HR professional, a leader, or just someone who has survived a few too many staff meetings, Hermie stories will make you laugh, think, and maybe even change the way you see your workplace. Purchase Hermie the HR Hermit Crab, Out of the Loop, Into the Fire, or HR Hung Out to Dry, now available on Amazon and Ingram Spark. Shop now at harmoniousworkplaces.com/HermieHRCrab. That's harmoniousworkplaces.com/HermieHRCrab.
Ha! Big change of Fred.
And we're back. All right, Ben, we've been talking about communication.
Whirlwind tour of communication.
Ooh, boy.
All of communication boiled down into 38 minutes.
That's right. Yeah. Yes. Just like, it's by no means is this again a comprehensive class, but boy, it's I think there's a lot of places you can go to dig into specific areas here.
Yeah.
But
I love what you teed up before the break, though, in terms of a specific example of using very new, very modern technology to facilitate some kind of communication activity,
right,
and taking it into a very practical realm.
Yeah. So we talked about a lot of these communication channels, right? And even with in-person meetings, if you can, with a lot of these, you can record transcripts, right? Which has been a game changer for me. I don't know about you, Ben, but but you can even let's even say you're taking notes, right? Oftentimes I take those notes, I put them into OneNote, or I put them into some other even a Google Doc or something to that effect, right? So I can take that information and within either an agent that I've created, so agentic AI, right, that I have trained on how am I going to build an email, or how am I going to, so I might train them to be my communications intern, or train them to be, some other pseudo employee, right? So they have more of the specialized knowledge, and they could work with other agents that you can build, right, to really create very quickly communication that could be more effective. I can take some of those notes. I can also take what I know about so I talk a lot about, when I teach my classes, I talk about personas and who are we going to talk to? What's their profile? What are their preferences? How old are they? All those things, so that we can tailor the message individually, right? And then you can take all those people, those individuals, and put them into groups, find patterns about how to manage, communication within those groups. And by taking that stuff, right, and then identifying the channel that we're going to use, you can have not only informed by the agents, but using generative AI, come up with what's this email going to look like, or how do I start this team chat, or how do I sum up this video call. I was recently working with in fact, I'm going in a little later today to talk to a law firm to show them how to use and forgive me, I don't remember the acronym for SOC, but SOC compliant tools, which Zoom and Teams are, to be able to record not only virtual meetings and transcripts for virtual meetings, but also in-person meetings where you just turn on the button and allow your microphone to pick it up and then, turn that into notes, right? Which are then legally defensible, right? So there's
SOC SOC, system and organizational controls.
System and organizational controls. Thank you.
So in many industries that are required to be compliant, think healthcare or certain kinds of manufacturing, you would have these systems and organizational controls so you can ensure repeatability and traceability. So if something goes wrong, you know where the source error was, or you have a process that you like and you get the widget or the process exactly the way you want it, you can repeat that.
Sure. Awesome.
Sorry for the tangent.
Oh, no, that's great. That's exactly what I've needed, because, this is, those highly regulated environments, legal, finance.
Right.
Like
finance,
I said,
healthcare.
Healthcare, right? All of
manufacturing industries for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So being able to capture that information and then have it, there's also a level of security that needs to be involved with any of this, right? So if you're within an organization, you also have to be very careful about what tools you're using, and not some free version of ChatGPT that is informing the rest of
the
LLM, right? The large language model.
It's another good point about communication in terms of the field or the boundaries of a communication. If we're having a very personal conversation that's a one-on-one,
right,
that sphere is very, very small. It might just be you and me. Sure. Whereas we're talking about team data or organizational data, that sphere is a little bit bigger, but you don't want it to be the universe or the entire planet. And so there are great tools and systems now to keep your organizational data in a walled garden, if you will,
right?
That a large language model or some AI tools can have access to, but it doesn't open that up to all the training that other models might do.
Yep.
So that's super important to keep those things tight so that they can improve how those tools respond to what you need. And the agents that you were just talking about, they're going to give you a lot more credible, trustworthy information. It's more governable.
You need governance for that. Yes, right. Yes.
Credibility, the trustworthy, the transparency, all of that, that's so important.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah. No, that's perfect. And I mean, that's just it. Like so there are definitely those things you have to keep in mind as you are planning. So communication should not be let's just put this into play, right? Like, it needs to be intentional about how you are planning it. Even in the PMI, Project Management Institute, PMBOK, the project management book of knowledge, right? They talk about, there are 5 different stages to a project. There are 12 different knowledge areas. That communication and planning communications and having all of that included in that planning process is super important, because you need to know from a stakeholder engagement, that's another knowledge area, right? You need to know what or who you're working with and what they need, right, from a persona standpoint, but also what permissions are needed. There are definitely from an HR standpoint, client standpoint, what executives need and don't need and all that. All that needs to be factored into how are we going to use email, from a team chat, right? Are we going to have an executive chat that's separate from, a specific team chat? Then there's, of course, the whole organization, how do we put controls into all that stuff? Um, from a video conferencing standpoint, who needs to be involved, who gets the transcript, who gets the playback, all of that stuff, right? So all things that we need to think about. And we can use some of those tools like artificial intelligence to say, here's my organization, their uh, communication requirements, right? And actually put together hierarchies and, various different groups, for who gets what and what level of information gets redacted, what level of information stays open to everybody, so it's been, the last few years have been really interesting in how you can facilitate all of that, if that makes sense.
And the project that you were doing, that you were explaining about using agents and grouping people into personas and having tailored communications, all of that was an effort to help drive more specific tailored communications to different parts of an organization.
Yeah.
Am I tracking that?
Yep. I mean, I have used it for that, in an OD project. I have used that certainly in our consulting, right, where we compartmentalize who we're going to go after and to from a sales standpoint, who we're going to re-engage with from a client standpoint, and then from a partner standpoint, and it allows us to tailor that message and the channels used and all of that to what we're doing, right? So it's not just we can talk about some case studies like that at another time. I know we're coming up to time here, but there's certainly a lot to be that every organization has some nuance and difference to it, and it's and also available resources. Some of them don't have all those more sophisticated resources. I'm sorry to have taken over the third chapter of this.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
But we're just about at time here, Ben. So
yeah.
Any parting words for you?
I think the big takeaway for me in terms of communicating with others to be more effective on the job, turn knowledge into some sort of capability or all of that still comes back to two primary things. One is there's an intentionality behind it, a thoughtfulness behind it, and then there's the listening component and just trying to understand where that other person is or that other group of people are, and then how you can engage with them so that you can further that capability or further that knowledge transfer or further that behavior change that you're trying to enable.
Lovely. We started with Covey. We ended with Covey. That's great. Full circle. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Nice.
What about you?
Yeah, no, I totally align with that, Ben, because we need to be able to understand. We have tools that can help us to understand, and I think we cannot wholly rely on the tools to just do the work. I mean, I think there is a certain level of human interaction and
for sure
expert judgment as a tool and technique from project management that we would need to guide us along the way.
Right, for sure. The tools at this point, they're all enablers and facilitators at best, and I have not seen anything that I can completely just turn everything over and click a magic button and it just handles everything.
Right.
At least I haven't seen that yet.
So no, I haven't either.
There's always been that need for a human component to it.
Right.
And I think probably that will stay for quite a while. That
Okay.
human element of interacting with other humans, I don't see that being completely replaced.
Yeah.
In a
Okay.
real, true, credible fidelity kind of way.
Right. Yeah, I love it. Yeah. I love that you use fidelity there. That whole trust factor, right? That's got to, and understanding factor has got to be there.
Yeah.
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 All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us for our 99th.
99. Yes.
Mm,
Love it.
lovely.
Love it.
So
Yes.
we hope you'll join us for
Communicate
our
with her.
100th. Yes. Please.
Tell us what you like, what you don't like. Give us your thoughts and feedbacks. What did we miss? What would you like to amplify?
Absolutely.
Ask our resident HR hermit crab
He
all
would,
sorts of good questions.
he would love to communicate with you for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can go to harmoniousworkplaces.com/askhermy and ask Hermie a question, and he will respond with an email or a web cartoon, or we'll figure out some way for Hermie to address your issues. So
There you go. There you go.
all right. Well, thanks again for joining us. Until we meet again, make change your friend. Bye. Thanks for listening to Harmonious Workplaces. You can find all episodes, resources, and ways to connect with us at www.harmoniousworkplaces.com. If you enjoyed the show, we'd love your feedback. Please rate, review, share, and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. And don't forget to add Harmonious Workplaces to your favorites so you're notified when new episodes are released. Again, visit us at www.harmoniousworkplaces.com.